Thank you very much. I will start to talk about the overall project within this presentation and topic of what we're going. Kristofer is going to go into more details about fits in. And this is not the content of my toilet bag for my trip to Hamburg. This is the logo of our blog for the project. Anyway, the overall project then is about the internet commerce of falsified medicines through Greyzone marketplaces and online pharmacies. And what we are particularly focusing on is how official pharmacies have to compete with Greyzone marketplaces for attention when people search for certain kinds of medicines. It could be slimming pills, opioids, medicines for erectile dysfunction, etc., which is very popular. And Greyzone then is what we call Greyzone pharmacies is online marketplaces that often sell medications without any prescriptions internationally. And what we know so far then, before we got started with this project then, is Google's algorithms and the way they are regularly changed is a very elusive topic, which makes it very difficult for companies that try to update their websites and SEOs, etc. And but there is also a trend, as far as we can see, that commercial platforms such as search engines have increasingly added what we could call a social dimension to relevance assessment. And for example, a recent study shows how Google search gives much lower attention to anti-vax websites compared to other competitors. And it seems like Google search favors more established voices at the expense of marginalized groups. And this has to do with the changes starting from 2014, when Google claimed that the company differentiates the role of information quality depending on what the websites are about. I think you have heard about your money, your life topics, such as health, of course. And also very important is the work of the so-called the other side of search engine optimization, the so-called black hat technique, it's a SEO technique, which it's practices that are used to increase a site's ranking through means that violate what search engine companies approve as a good practice normally. And these two articles here are two examples of studies on how Google search keywords are poisoned and made certain websites to be redirected. And I will refer to a small study that we did together with Cecilia as a runner-up to the project that Kristofer will talk more about. This was our life before RAT. So excuse us for doing research with such low numbers. But anyway, we were investigating the how much the interest, the search engine interest for alternative drugs against COVID-19 and how they were searched for in Swedish Google. And it was ivermectin, also used for horses, and remdesivir, which became very popular due to the advertisement by Donald Trump, and hydrochloroquine. And what you could see here, if you have very good eyes, is that in Sweden it seems that ivermectin was the most popular alternative drugs against COVID-19. So what we did then, without going into the details, is we tried different kinds of searches for ivermectin. And as long as we only used the one word, ivermectin, we didn't find almost any alternative or pro or anti-vax websites or anything. The result was filled with the official version of ivermectin, and if it was described how to use it, it was for horses, as we said earlier. And it was more a case that it was recommended not to use it against COVID-19. But if you added a word like buy in Swedish, you got a totally different picture. So, to make something much more complicated, very short, it seems like a Google search, and that is also how they try to describe it, strike a balance between providing the user what the user wants at the same time as keeping some kind of societal awareness, not supporting a website in these pages, your money, your life pages. So an open-ended search with single keywords tends to prioritize societal relevance, what is good for society as a whole, as identified by the official bodies, if you like. While more precise search that combines buy with a specific drug increases the likelihood to find what you really want if you want to buy it in an online Greyzone marketplace. So when you know what you're looking for, Google's expressed desire to do good for society takes a backseat to providing a product to the satisfaction of the customer. And one thing a special thing now is how we will find the bridge to Kristofer here, is that one interesting finding from this study we got was that we saw a number of links that seemed very strange in the context of medication. Like, for example, the second link here that we got when we searched for ivermectin buy, which is a website for automobiles. And so it's a typical example we figured out of redirection and Black Hat CEO. So we decided to dig more into that, and that's when RAT came into the picture. So, please.
Yes. Thank you. All right. So, yeah, as you can see, there's something going on here. And if you're familiar with redirecting practices, maybe you know that sometimes it's just simply a way for accurately redirecting a customer to another user, to another website, but this was something else. So we decided to do an additional study based on these findings to have a better understanding on how this malicious behavior, which you're identifying as search engine poisoning, reconstructs the search infrastructure. And without going into many details about what we mean with information infrastructure, we specifically wanted to find out the extent of search engine poisoning related to different search queries, which are related to different medical products, for example, and different additional keywords to the products, and which would tell us something about the prevalence of Greyzone pharmacies on Swedish search results, and to an extent, the effects of poisoning to the information infrastructure of search. So this is what this is basically why we're thinking about what happens if this is a problem, right? The information infrastructure becomes poisoned by the redirections, which subverts our ability to make informed decisions, breaks trust with the platform, and provides some sort of misalignment with the relevance goals from the company. This is our interest with RAT at the first stages as a way to collect data on the keywords and the links based on those keywords. So this kind of relates to my question to you on your query sample presentation about because the way we were collecting these keywords before or so far has been to interact with unofficial Google Trends API, basically to come up with the related terms for three medical products that we were interested in looking into. So based on this, we had some this is basically a sample of I think it was 80 different queries that came out. And these are, according to Google Trends, the top related queries to the products over the last 12 months. So you can see Tramadol is one of these medical products, and Flashback is a message board very popular in Sweden. And then you can find also Tramadol 200 milligrams, which is most likely looking for some sort of product, for example. Receptrid, which of course means without receipt, prescription. So it gives you an idea of the search terms that people are using. Of course, we have, this is ongoing. We haven't settled on the final set of queries. So there's some things that we need to keep into account, like the time, for how long is this, the stretch of time for the collection of the keywords. Are we interested in the more relevant, rising interests over the population, or is it more of a wider study, for example? Yeah. And also the selection of products. This is also something that we're actively considering, because this will ultimately decide on the size of the keywords and the size of the analysis. So for now, using the rat demo, which was very kindly offered by the team, I was able to collect 800 queries with the links. And I started to do an exploration how we could find out first redirection, which is easy, which is just whether it's the same URL when you click on it and when you end up. But the hardest part is malicious redirection, because Greyzone pharmacies are not strictly illegal, so they won't end up in the typical. There's a few organizations around that collect websites that are known to be illegal or compromised and so on. So so far I haven't found any of the URLs in those lists. But as we can see, as I'll show you later, they do show up even in this smaller data set. I've seen also the use of legit script, but I haven't tried it yet. There's no way to pre-check the list, so I don't know if they would have that information, but it's a possibility. And eventually, the idea is to also do a network analysis to figure out how widespread this poisoning is across the links and how they connect to each other, which relates more to the infrastructure perspective. And but if a rat wants to do eventually a hyperlink scraping, that would be very interesting as well. Maybe for rat 3 or 4. Yeah. So this is an example of out of the 780 links that were found with this query, only about around 7 or 8 had a redirection, and only 2 of them had a redirection to a different domain name. And all the others were typical, like main page to landing page to something else, regular website stuff. You don't really have to worry about that. But 2 of them redirected from a Swedish website to a more international website, which ended up being, by visual inspection, ended up being one of these Greyzone pharmacies. No malicious redirection in this case. Maybe it's a bit unclear if it's not as visible as or it doesn't strike as much as the example before where a car company was being redirected to a pharmacy. It's still a redirection of some kind, but it was, even though this collection, the way it was collected, it's how people are searching rather than us putting the keyword for buy. we weren't directing much of this, of the way the keywords were generated. So far, this is the exploration that I have done. But what we want to find out, and hopefully this is where collaboration with RAD can help us, is the extent of malicious redirection, or even just this other type of redirection that we found between a Swedish website to a more international website. And difference between medical products, difference between supplementary keywords, and then afterwards we want to do some figure out the extent of the network poisoning with visualization statistics and so on. So yeah, we're looking forward to trying out the query sampler when it's available as well, and so we can also compare different types of keyword collections. But that's basically the work so far, and thank you.
Thank you.